The news of yesterday was Frank Reich was giving up play calling. And that was the news. I'm like, you heard the applause. That's what yesterday was. That was from Dennis Cox. The news yesterday was Frank Reich was giving up play calling. The news from this point forward is Thomas Brown is taking over play calling. Right? Thomas Brown is more, and he has to be more, and he better be more than just not Frank Reich. Because I think some were so frustrated with the way the offense was called over the first month of the season that they started just being all in on anybody but Frank Reich. Right? They could have named somebody from the stands and they would have said, good, we've been screaming run the ball the whole time. Like it would have worked out, right? One of my buddy's dads at our high school games would just stand at the top and go, run the darn ball every play. It's like, oh, you want to call plays? Here's dive. That's all you need to know. Thomas Brown is not only taking over Frank Reich, he's also expected to solve a bunch of problems that have nothing to do with the play calling, and he's also auditioning. I'll tell you what he's auditioning for in a second, but first, here's Thomas Brown in his own words on what he wants to work on with the offense.
Continue to build upon what we've built so far. Just being able to clean up some of those mistakes we've made before in the past. We've obviously came out last game with the first opportunity to have no turnovers, no penalties, which is a huge deal, but should be our standard operating procedure. But then also continue to try to find ways to put our guys in the best spot to have success. Again, I've been a part of this offense from the very beginning. I didn't just get here. So I think what we've been kind of talking about and installing has kind of been one of my roles and responsibilities is now have an opportunity to call the players on game day, but also have more of an imprint when it comes to the day-to-day operations.
I'm not sure if right now is when everyone wants to hear how involved you were with the offense before now. They want different. They want change. They want new. Thomas Brown continued on when he knew that being a play caller was possible.
My interview process, I always mentioned at some point, wasn't exactly sure when it would happen, but had in his mind to be able to turn over to somebody at some point. And I will say the previous weeks has kind of been a build-up of, kind of give me more and more opportunities throughout practice to be able to, even though it's scripted, but to call it more, to have more involvement in that regard. But it's always been in his mind. It's been just waiting for the opportunities.
Here's the thing. He's not Frank Reich. He's not Matt Rule. And that is enough for some fans. But he's taken over an offense with the same issues it had when Frank Reich was the play caller. Right? The offensive line, if you call a different play, isn't necessarily going to block better. The wide receivers, if you call an in route instead of an out route, aren't necessarily going to get a ton more separation against the secondary. The running backs aren't going to run through more tackles. He needs to simply emphasize the strengths of what they do. And that's part of acknowledging that maybe Frank Reich didn't understand the strengths of what some of the guys on the team did. He wasn't maximizing. So who is Thomas Brown? He's a former 6th-round pick running back. Comes from the Rams where he worked under Sean McVay. People get excited about that. Sean McVay's obviously a very good offensive mind. If there's a concern, he was a running backs and a tight ends coach. That's what he was with the Rams. There's a much, much more common path to being a really, really good play caller through being a wide receivers coach or a quarterbacks coach. The running backs coaches and the tight ends coaches that became super successful offensive coordinators and play callers, it's basically Eric Bieniemy and... So the passing game is where I'm going to be judging him the harshest. The other thing is this. This is what he's auditioning for. I've been saying it from the very, very beginning. And we saw it this past weekend kind of just absolutely smacked in front of our face. I think the Panthers need to follow the Dolphins' blueprint, where year one with your top pick quarterback, being Bryce Young or Tua, you are mostly gathering information, right? You are learning, what does this player like? What does this player need? What style of receivers work best with his skill set? What style of play calling works best with his skill set? You do all of that. You're just gathering it. You're like a sponge. You're soaking it up. And then over the next couple of years, it's about using that information to assemble the perfect supporting cast. Does he throw better with speed guys that get a large amount of separation? Does he throw better to big receivers that can win jump balls in 50-50s? Right? Basically, next offseason, when Mike Evans is looking for a new team, do you want Mike Evans? He's 6'5", he wins jump balls. Or do you want somebody with reckless amounts of speed? Right? There are different wide receivers to bring in. Like every Panthers fan right now acknowledges they need more playmaking at wide receiver. Need more separation, need to get open. They need more. It can't be Adam Thielen and the Funky Bunch. The Funky Bunch needs to be their own stars. So which wide receivers are you going after? 6'4"? Runs a 4.5? Or 5'10", runs a 4.3"? Which ones are you going after? That's what this season is all about learning, like the Dolphins learned. But guess what else the Dolphins did? They found Mike McDaniel, who is a quirky individual, by far the best guy to have a mic'd up video of. He says things like LOL out loud, not ironically. Sometimes when he's talking into the headset of Tua Tagovailoa, he'll just go, Georgia's way better than Alabama, right? And then the microphone will cut off.
Yeah.
He's a quirky guy, but he is a wildly innovative play caller that works perfectly with Tua Tagovailoa's skill set. Thomas Brown is auditioning as the play caller for the rest of the year to be Bryce Young's Mike McDaniel, just like Tua Tagovailoa found his actual Mike McDaniel. That's what he's auditioning for. It might be the second most important position in the franchise right now is whoever's designing the offense that Bryce Young will develop within.
And if you figure out that he is the guy for Bryce, you better pay him so he doesn't go somewhere else.
You pay him, and if he gets a head coaching job, you consider moving on from Frank Reich to keep Thomas Brown.
Yeah.
And it's happened in the past. An example I can use that I know for sure is, and it didn't necessarily work out, but I'm just saying this thought process exists. Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Jameis Winston. They liked the way he developed early in his career. The head coach, I believe, was Lovie Smith, offensive coordinator Dirk Cutter. They fired Lovie Smith and promoted Dirk Cutter from offensive coordinator to head coach because they went, wait a second, we want to move on from the head guy, but we like the way our young quarterback is developing, so let's just go ahead and make Cutter the head coach, and that way Jameis has the same voice in his ear. Now, again, didn't work out. Turns out Cutter and Jameis were not the modern-day Breeze and Peyton, but that type of thinking happens. If Thomas Brown is the play caller that unlocks Bryce Young, you do everything you can to attach them at the hip and never let them leave. Never let them leave. That's what he's auditioning to be right now. Right? I talk about it all the time. You ask, everyone asks, like, how does Chad Henne get his job? How does Chase Daniel, how does he get his job? How do these guys end up backup quarterbacks forever? Well, I'll tell you what really helps if the starter's like, no, I like him.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to move on from him? Why? That's my guy. I like him. He's good in the room. You want to get the best job security in the world if you're Thomas Brown? Have Bryce Young improve once you start calling plays, and then this offseason have Bryce go, no, I like that guy. That's what he's auditioning for.